welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for our first Future Leaders event. So for those who are new, Byproduct is has been a Slack community for product leadership, primarily in Berlin. Myself and Nikhil, who can't make it today because disruption to flights and whatnot, started a Slack channel at the beginning of last year to give people like the panel a place to kind of share ideas and run events that are tailored towards them, and that's been pretty good. But what's happened is, like any product, it's evolved, and one of the things that we have decided we want to do is share some of the experience with people who maybe aren't heads of just yet, but maybe you want to be, and I guess you don't know what you don't know. So we're going to be running a series of these, and the first topic seemed like an obvious one of, do you want to be a head of? Do you know what that really means? What does the job that your boss does, and what does that really entail? So that's why we're here today. So we have a panel of three. So we have Andrew, Parth, and Scott, all experienced CPOs and product people with lots of experience, here to answer your questions. And I'm hosting as one of the co-founders of Byproduct.
Might be worthwhile just doing a little bit of an introduction from the panelists about their experience in product and where they're at now.
Yeah, so let's go in order. If Parth wants to tell us a little bit about himself, and we'll go in that order.
Sure, thank you. So hi everybody, my name is Parth. As Mike was mentioning, I've spent like a considerable amount of time in product now, so approximately around 10 plus years, and different focuses like SaaS products and also around gaming products. So pretty much overall, started in consultancy, then went on to kind of lead product teams, and overall have had a very diverse set of experiences, specifically on the international scale. So I'm really keen to kind of get to know what kind of questions you folks have about like product leadership, and really happy to kind of be here. Thanks for the invite, Mike.
Thank you. Andrew, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So I've been in, probably you can tell from the color of my hair, in product management and tech for some time, actually about 30 years, if I add it all up. So I started in engineering. I'm a sort of certified engineer, electronics engineering actually, so hardware initially. And I started doing my first product role, I think around, I don't know, 1993 or 4, just when the internet was happening, back in the days of Netscape and dial-up modems. And I've kind of been in and out of product really since those days. Worked in different sorts of company situations, big ones, small ones, different industries. I've done some entrepreneurship around new venture development, ran my own business for 12 years. And am now working actually as a full-time position. Started out as a consultancy thing, but the opportunity was so interesting that they offered me a full-time job. So I'm now at Market Logic Software in Berlin, leading all of the product things, mainly around the innovation area and all the future stuff. And it's a really interesting company because unusually has an extremely, if I can say, enlightened management team, and pretty much I can do what I want. So I'm experimenting with all sorts of new things, taking Scrum and Agile to, if I can even suggest it, to a new level, experimenting with co-creation and deeply integrating users into the design process. So yeah, very, very excited to be at Market Logic. And parallel with that, I'm developing my own sort of, I guess, training, coaching, consultancy business on the side. So that's a little bit about me.
Cool. Mute myself. Cool. And last but not least, Scott.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name's Scott Williams. Like Andrew, I've been in this industry probably far too long for my own good, to be honest. I started off in '97 working at a company called Scoot, where I was in charge of building products and training salespeople how to sell stuff. Had no idea what I was doing. And then did a whole bunch of kind of commercial products, kind of slightly engineering strategic roles at the FT, up my street. I worked at Google for nearly 5 years and launched AdWords cost per click model, which was nuts, as you can imagine. And ran my own consultancy. So invariably, the abridged version is I basically either work in startups for a while or do insanely difficult digital transformation projects, because I like digital transformation that I think enables you to become better at products and better at problem solving sometimes than building a straightforward product, because digital transformation is mostly about people and they're way more difficult than technology on the whole. And that's where I am at the moment. So I've spent 3 years building a whole new bunch of microservices for De Gruyter, which is this massive kind of family eccentric academic publisher. And so we've had to build a whole new team, agile, scrum, delivery, governance, data science, all that stuff at scale very quickly globally. So which I did during a pandemic, which I don't recommend anyone do. don't do that during a pandemic. But yeah, that's me.
Oh, right. Thanks, guys. Charlie, we've got another slide and we can quickly get moving. So today, why do you want to be ahead of product? You know, what does product mean? And, you know, what does it mean to be ahead of product? You know, what does a day-to-day look like? How much work have you got? What is that work? You know, who's in, you know, you're in charge of the product direction and controlling that. You know, what kind of person, you know, does it take to succeed in this role? Because it's not an easy one. Have we got any more slides, or is this it, Charlie? Yeah, so we're looking at what the actual role could be. You know, we've got expectations of what it could be in the actual reality, and that's what today's about. You know, getting to ask these guys what it's really like doing this job. So, you know, within your responsibilities, you know, you need to motivate your team. You've got the final say on all of that. You know, everyone's different. Managing people is not easy. You know, we've got to manage people's expectations as well as the product development, and there's always a learning curve going on with the market that you're addressing. Guys, is there anything you want to chip in on these slides? You've kind of helped us create some of these points before we break into the rooms.
Pretty good scope, if you ask me.
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty thorough, dude.
Yeah.
I tried to keep it quite high level because I thought it might be useful if you guys kind of dig down into the nitty-gritty and the granular stuff that I'm not.
There's one comment. I was talking to someone about this today, actually, and I think if you work in marketing or product, everyone that you have to work with is already an expert because they use an app or use the website or see a poster or read a blog or whatever. So I think there's that kind of, how do you try politely tell people that if you use something doesn't mean you understand how to build it. But I don't know how you paraphrase that. Maybe it's an ego thing, I don't know.
Well, you managed to do it without any expletives, so that's great.
Yeah. Have you noticed no swearing so far? It's pretty good, right?
Hello, yeah, this time, yeah.
It's recorded as well, so we'll play it back.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, good to know.
Yeah, we'll just hit the beat button, it's fine. Have we got any more slides, or is that all the key areas covered?
Yeah.
All right, okay, cool. So, yeah, I mean, if you're moving into that head of role, you know, you're definitely not going to be fully autonomous because you're not at the absolute top of the tree. So who's above you? Is it a director? Is it a VP? Is it CPO? Or And one thing that this isn't on the slide, you might not even report into somebody like that. You might be reporting into a founder. You might be reporting into a head of engineering or a CTO. And, for all the will in the world, they're not product people. And they often maybe overlook the nuances within the role. So there's your challenge, managing expectations and working for people who aren't necessarily cut from the same cloth as you. And then you've got all the fun stuff, finding the funds to do products, managing those budgets, getting approval, getting buy-in, and then communicating that, throughout. I think one thing that you're quite big on, Scott, is once you've actually built something, like telling people about it. There's no point building something really interesting and then not communicating it to the business. And maybe that's an area that's sometimes overlooked a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think just leading on from that as well, you're talking about experience of working in product then. I think it'd be useful for you guys on the panel just to talk about what you found working up to the positions that you're at now, and challenges, and maybe even stuff that you found easier than you expected, stuff that you found different regardless of whether it was harder or easier.
Yeah, that's a really good one, actually.
Yeah, it's really good.
At this point, looking back, you kind of take it all for granted, but just sort of rewinding to the point where you start getting involved in it at this more senior level, and the sort of the shock, the realization hits you that how little you really know. I mean, you've been operating at a particular level, and then there's a whole new vocabulary and a different style of communication, and the way things get done and decisions are made is just so different to how things happen at a working level, if you will. So yeah, that comes as a bit of a shock, and you can feel very disorientated initially. I did anyway.
Yeah, no, same. And also, I think it's impossible not to make some fundamental mistakes on that journey too. Like, I think I've definitely made an unbelievable amount along the way, and I think when you make them, make sure you're kind of, you forgive yourself, because it's the contrast as you go up that scale is, depending on the business and the context, can be pretty daunting, and so you will make mistakes trying to do it too, I think.
That's right. Yeah, and when you do, you have to clean it up straight away.
Yeah, that's the other bit. Yeah,
and be seen to be cleaning it up, not sort of trying to. Well, I mean, people have different ways of working, right? So there's not necessarily one way to do things, but if you do make a mess, particularly in public, it's best to sort of actively fess up and move on and clean it up in public, and not sort of pretend that it wasn't really your fault and spend an hour digging out, or even a day. I've seen digging out some email that someone sent months ago and highlighting you said that this just make it 10 times worse. Yeah,
100%, definitely.
But yeah, one of the things I noticed and maybe it's Scott, something that you can resonate with as well, that there's a kind of an unwritten rule about as you go up, and I'm not necessarily talking about a startup because that's a different dynamic, but in a larger company, even 100 employees, 200 employees and up, and obviously you get into big corporations, the higher you go, the shorter the segments of communication are.
Yeah.
And it slows down. So senior level people tend to have like 500 emails a day. The emails are very short. If you send an email that's like this long, which is maybe okay at the working, people just will ignore it.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's really, I always think it's about the higher up you go, the better your storytelling has to be.
Yeah.
So it has to be, it has to be this kind of fluid, kind of constant narrative that's being, kind of bounced around, and you're just being very consistent with it. And after a while, people start.
I also completely just on the point that Andrew made, like the difference between the startups and the bigger organizations, right? This is something that I could really also personally kind of experience. It really stands out. And product management in a bigger organization versus product management in a startup, they're really different. And I think what Scott was also kind of mentioning earlier is that Yeah, pretty much, the set pieces that are around all of these things, right? There are so many methodologies that are there in product, if you think about it. It's very easy to lose oneself in terms of, okay, what do I really need to do in which of these setups? And that's pretty much where kind of going into it with a very open mind, pretty much, and absorbing the reality of the organization first, and then adapting around it to kind of form what is the best way to develop the product there. I think these are really, really key points to kind of succeed, because nowadays we are like, it's just the reality of our business and our market. People are moving between jobs. People are changing a lot of these jobs, are moving between roles, are moving between companies. And this bit with respect to the company culture and the way products are developed and all of these things and the scale and the methodologies, all of this are going to be different. And that's why it's very important to kind of first give yourself the time to get absorbed and like absorb in the culture, absorb in the methodologies there, and then kind of go from there. Because a lot of times product people, because they have potentially done some good work with respect to, let's say, I did design thinking somewhere, or I did something else, like, pretty much all of those buzzwords which a lot of the, like, jobs also try to kind of look for and post out towards. But those buzzwords may or may not have the exact same formalization in your setup. And this is very, very important to kind of understand and get a feel of, to kind of succeed in these roles. Because, yeah, completely,
Yeah,
as
that's also very true, isn't it? That's such a good one. I mean, it's true in software, words and definitions are important, but as you go through, you you get to sort of understand how different people operate. Some people get very, very hung up on small details, or they'll get diverted. They'll look at a definition or a word, or if you're talking about an agile transformation, for example, or you're talking about Scrum, or you're talking about an MVP, these words have meaning, different meanings to different people. And when you're sort of trying to get across an important idea, a proposal for doing something, or perhaps even cancelling a project, something I'm particularly involved in at the moment, you have to get everyone lined up on the baseline before you even start talking about the actual topic, because otherwise you go into the conversation and people have a different understanding of the words that you're using to what you think they do. So that's kind of a basic error, and maneuvering things so that when you come to the decision's already been made, and it's almost like, why are we having this meeting? That's a success. If you actually the worst thing you can do is have some big executive review to make some decision about launching a new project, cancelling a project, hiring a bunch of people, and then presenting all these people with a whole load of information, right, completely fresh. It'll be a total disaster. It'll be like herding chickens. You'll lose control of it, even if you're very strong. So the whole process of how you actually maneuver and choreograph and orchestrate things, so that when you get to the big decision that's already made, that's a whole discussion, and you can make a lot of mistakes along the way. I don't know whether everyone's sort of
yeah. Well, I think I have this I have kind of broadly kind of two approaches. So
we have a question, I think, from
great, even better. I can stop rambling.
So please forgive me for interrupting you, Scott.
I was just going to say, I think I've had a very kind of, I've been lucky to work with lots of really quite incredible people at points, and just watch. And one of the things I learned at Google, which always made me laugh, was how there'd be a plan, but even people like Larry and Sergey didn't buy into the plan. So like Chrome is a great example, right? That basically the exec board were like, yeah, we're not going to build a browser. And then Larry and Sergey went off and told 2 PMs to build a browser and not tell anyone, because they actually deep down couldn't be bothered with the politics, but knew it was the right thing to do. So there's an element sometimes where you have to be a little bit subversive with change to, if you're confident that what you're doing will bring the business impact that it needs, you can sometimes, politics and egos are always an invitation, right? You don't necessarily have to, it depends on the context. This is not without risk, but sometimes you can make change and ask for forgiveness afterwards. To Andrew's point, if you spend 3 months trying to explain why this is a good idea, sometimes it's good just to have a holding pattern and do it, if you know it's going to work, not without risk. But that's the other element of this that no one talks about, is that sometimes you can get out of meetings and just constantly being told that what you want to do is wrong, and and the team know that it's right. And then, so what do you do in that situation? Because that's a tricky one to manage, especially if you've got a bunch of motivated people underneath you who know it's the right thing to do, but management don't buy into it, or X, Y, and Z. So that's a reality of trying to build something, which I've used a couple of times. It's not easy, but I've done it. But yeah.
Yeah, it can. It's a really good point. I mean, I've actually been in a situation a couple of times now where, and this is applicable, I think, in big companies as well as startups and small companies, where the quote strategy or the vision is really not there.
Right. Exactly.
It's not. It just isn't. Let's be honest. It's just not.
Yeah.
I mean, the executive. The other thing to realize is the C-suite in these smaller companies are trying to get the stuff together, just like the engineering teams, and they're also finding it difficult. That they are developing a kind of software themselves, and sometimes we perhaps expect a bit more of them than we should. So in that situation, if you need to have, excuse me, some clarity, I mean, you do need to, have a certain level of, I don't know, product people. You do need to be a bit,
exactly.
full on.
Yeah, exactly. Think about putting it. Yeah,
you can't be sort of, too timid. You have to say to them, look, let's all get together for half an hour and we'll agree 3 things. I don't care what they are. We are going to have an agreement on 3 key principles at the end of this half hour, and then we'll develop them further, and we'll have 6, and then we'll have 8, and then we'll have 9. But we have to at least agree on 3 things. So make it very, very simple for them, and then then you've got the basics of something that you can build a vision or a strategy on, rather than going around and around and around in circles. So little techniques like that can be quite useful. But to get, I think Alistair Coburn has this concept of clear the fog.
Yeah.
There's a fog in the C-suite as well, right?
Without question. Yeah. In fact, one could argue that sometimes the foggiest place is at the top of the organization, right?
Yeah. This is very right. Very right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Excellent. Have we got any more slides, or are we,
well, so I was just going to ask if Gabriel just wants to ask his question.
Okay.
I guess Scott and Andrew actually covered up a lot of what I had to ask. But just to make it clear, I had some experience in product management in a big company, which works with digital banking in Latin America. And as I have just experienced in big companies, I was curious about the problems that we face in that environment, like the politician problems, the politics that we have faced in order to manage all the expectations of the other stakeholders are always present in big companies. I was curious if in startups we have more, we are more independent in terms of taking those decisions. But I guess this is not exactly what happens by what you have said. Like sometimes, as you have said, we do not have the proper strategy yet. And maybe we have to ask for apology besides asking for permission in order to build our own product vision, because it will not be there. But that was what I understood, just to see if it was right.
Well, I mean, I think, it's product is about context, right? Kind of internal and external context. So like there is no one way to build a product. There's no one way to scale something. There's no one way to deal with politics. It's like being head of product is annoyingly exhausting, right? Because effectively all you're dealing with internally are other people's projections and fears of what's going to happen when you build this thing. Because the subtext a lot of this is that unless people come together and tell you exactly what's important, how can you possibly build something that then even like people externally may hate it, but at least everyone internal was like, well, at least I knew what you were trying to do. Like, you know, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, one thing I've seen from my perspective as the recruiter in all of this is in the startups, somebody hires or says they want to hire a head of product, but these founders maybe don't understand what a product manager really is, what product is, and actually they just want somebody to just get stuff done.
Yeah.
And you think you're going in to make this impact and shape what product looks like and, you know, contribute to, you know, this vision and strategy and what have you, but actually they know where they want to go, and, you know, they're kind of on this path, and you're just someone there to enable them to do it. And that's fine, but you're also you think you're being hired for your expertise of showing them how to get there. And that's the frustration I hear a lot of the time with people working in these types of environments. You are not given the autonomy or trusted to do your job, and you're almost like an order taker rather than an innovator.
Yeah, no, that I'd say that happens in most startups at the start. It's just how self-aware is the founder to go up at some point, oh, hang on, I think I might be the problem. And successful startup founders are the ones that realize quite quickly that they've got to let go and let other people screw up for 6 months to get really good, which is invariably what happens, right?
Just one thing. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just wanted to kind of articulate one thing for Gabriel. Like Gabriel, in terms of like the startup environments, one of the things that has worked really well for me, at least, to navigate through these situations, has been, you know, breaking the big picture down into like really small steps. And that is something that was like, you know, what we kind of talk about in terms of product development sprints, right? Is the same thing about ideation as well. And that is then much more easier to kind of get like, you know, stakeholder buy-ins in, because you're not, I mean, of course, in your head, you would potentially still need how this whole thing kind of adds up to form the end picture, the end goal. But then when you're kind of talking to the bunch of other folks who are just trying to scramble through to get the job done, for them, like, you know, the incremental bits are really making the huge difference, because if they're able to understand that one piece at that point in time, that's already enough for you to move on and get the setup kind of getting added up. Because otherwise what really happens is that if you, as we were talking about, you know, these approval cycles and, you know, pretty much kind of getting the whole buy-in, if you are going for an approach where you would pretty much want to kind of get the buy-in for the whole, let's say, plan for 3 months, 6 months, whatever period of time, that would be much more difficult to kind of align across due to all the different, like, you know, hindrances that we just spoke of. You know, the founder may not be understanding what they need to do, of course. And with if you think about startups and like young stage startups, there is a big voice that you would also see, and that would be from the investors, because they would pretty much themselves also have a vision of what is
oh god, yeah, because they're giving you the money, right?
Yes,
so yeah, exactly.
And they would come in pretty much with their portfolio of companies, because, okay, you know what, we have 15 other companies that are doing X and you are trying to do Y, and the founder is not able to back you at that point in time because he or she is not able to potentially understand the whole vision. And that's where you are like, okay, how do I navigate through this situation? So piecemeal is the strategy that I have seen has worked well for me.
I mean, I've got another perspective.
That clarifies a lot. Thank you.
For Gabriel, and those people, when I say another perspective, I don't mean a contrary perspective, but just an additional sort of way of looking at it. the reality is that sometimes you end up in a company situation. Could be a small company, could be a startup, could be a big company. Startup could be run by someone who really doesn't understand product, as Mike has just mentioned. Big company could be a lot of politics, or mid-sized company could be have just gone through an acquisition, or maybe the VCs have cleaned out the C-suite. I mean, you can be in different situations where there's let's say a difficult working environment, and you don't really feel that you can do the product role in the way that you would imagine that it should be done. In situations like that, there's pleasure in the process. And you may not be able to influence, strategy or vision because someone's very opinionated. There's a hippo involved. Don't try and go there. Take pleasure in doing the detailed work really well. This could be an opportunity for you to really understand Scrum, to really understand how to do it completely perfectly. Deeply immerse yourself in the field. Talk to people who are expert at it. Use this as an opportunity to really build out your competence and portfolio. So don't necessarily feel frustrated with it. Work on things that you are able to influence, that make the situation better, that you can learn from and develop from. Don't try and influence things that you can't influence, and then use that as a learning experience and move on to your next job, rather than sort of beating yourself up and getting very frustrated. Maybe that can be useful.
Yeah, so we broke out almost into all the rooms. So I think that hopefully that's worked quite nicely. But we just try and round things up, and then if we've got any final questions, or if people want to do any exchanges of ideas, then we can. I mean, the reason we've done this is to obviously provide people who are looking at, career development and what that looks like, and getting it from the people who've gone through the pain and made the mistakes, and maybe you can learn some of the things that a bit easier than they have, and we want this to be a continued theme, really. So we're all part of the Slack channel. We're going to create another channel within there, so we can just do #future leaders. If you've got any questions or you want to continue the conversation, we can do that. We can do that through Slack, and obviously you can DM one another and all that kind of stuff. So that's what Slack's really great for. But we want these online events to kind of be the kind of supercharge the conversation, and we need to know. We need suggestions of things that you would maybe want to dig into in a bit more deeper level, and myself and the people who are part of the panel. I think there's about 12 of us in total, coming up with ideas as well. And also, as this format worked, in theory it sounded good, bar for a couple of technical glitches, but hopefully it's worked well. So I guess before we wrap everything up, keen to hear everyone's thoughts. What's everyone's sort of standout point? And if there's any last questions, before the panel have to leave, then get your questions in. So I'll kind of open the floor up.
Well, Ben's sent a question across there. Ben, do you want to unmute yourself and ask it, or do you want me to ask it for you? Just in the kind of spirit of communication.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I'm Ben Shapiro. I'm a product manager in the U.S. for the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. So I work primarily in pharmaceutical technology. And thank you all for the time today and putting this event together. I think it was really great. So my question is just for anyone on the panel. Instead of looking back to the time you made the jump to product leadership, I'm really interested to know, if you were to look back at your own careers and yourselves, when were you ready to make that jump, and how do you come to that decision point? Thanks, Charlie.
I don't know if you ever know. I don't think you ever know that you're probably ready for it. I mean, I think I can only talk from my perspective. I think I wanted to do this because I was frustrated about how things are built and how things are done. But yeah, I mean, I could post-rationalize everything I've done and said over the last 25 years and turn it into a narrative. I think ultimately it's about finding people that you like working with and a management team that trust you. And if you have those two things, then you have a chance of it making it happening quicker than the other routes that we've spoken about, which are, ultimately product is a very, very political role at some point. So
I completely agree with Scott on that. I mean, I would say so for me, if I'm to look in retrospect, I would say a safer transition into a head of product role would be into a company where you're already probably a senior product manager, or into a domain where you already are well versed with. So switching a domain or switching a company, we are a senior product manager, let's say somewhere else, and of course, that's exactly. I mean, Mike would probably just kill me for saying this, but a lot of recruiters would reach out to you. Hey, you're a senior product manager. How about somewhere else? And that's pretty much where it sounds really interesting and would be very, very, let's say, enticing, but at the same time you would need to kind of ask questions that it's going to be a jump which is going to happen on several dimensions. One, your role is going to just now change from product to product plus everything that you saw on the slides in the previous during our chat. But at the same time, you would be also changing a company and probably a domain or any of those things. So the more variables you take on, the higher are the chances of failure. So that's pretty much where I would just say that, okay, hey, it's an easier transition to kind of look into the roles of what you're doing in your current, let's say, either the domain of expertise or the company. And once you feel that, okay, hey, you would be able to take those responsibilities there or kind of add more on the high level picture, high level vision, high level strategy, high level execution, all of those bits, I think that's where you can say that you are ready to take the leap. But again, it's very important to understand, I completely agree with Scott as well on that, is that the leap wouldn't necessarily mean that you would land on your feet successful and be great from day one. You have to be giving yourself the time and the leeway to learn at the job, because this one is going to be one of the biggest, let's say, switches in terms of how your day-to-day responsibilities are going to change from your focus being the product. Hey, I love the product and I want to be the head of product.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, to kind of give the definition or the direction to the product. But once you are actually the head of product, you are doing product the least amount of time and doing everything else for the most amount of time. So that's pretty much where I think these are things that you would need to kind of think about yourself. I mean, again, it's huge generalization that I did. It's really different for all organizations, and because in some organizations, in bigger organizations, there are also one product is defined or divided into several components, and there are head of products for each of the components. So you can potentially kind of go into a leadership role even in those scenarios. It's really varied, but I would say a safer journey is into something that you're already doing, transition into this role, get a taste of it, and then pretty much diversify.
Yeah, I suppose from my side, I would sort of answer the question in two ways. If you kind of look at the different situations as two extremes, I think that the best possible pathway, that the best possible point, to make the move from a senior product manager, say, to a head of product or group product manager or something, where you're leading other people. This is the first situation. There are markers, there are signs that you should look for. So examples would be, on the team call, you're always in the best shape with your actions. You're seen to be delivering faster than your colleagues at your current level to a higher quality level. You're seen to be the person that your boss will go to give a hard job to. You're the one that gets the stretch assignment. You're already at the working level seen by your peers to be someone that is actually operating at a level above them, and that's happening naturally and organically. And in that situation, when you are, when you apply for the role and you're interviewed and you get the job, they will have no problem working for you because you're already demonstrating competence. That's the best way it can happen. Didn't happen like that for me. I ended up applying for it because it was a quote sexy role, if I can use that term. You didn't have to wear a suit anymore. You got a nice company car. Had a sort of a Golf VR6 or GTI actually in the early days. Then you have unlimited petrol allowance. It was a kind of, and it was a cool role at that time in telecom to be a product manager. Here comes the product manager. Oh my God, take cover. So I just thought, and I was already running an engineering department, and I thought, a bit like Scott, I wanted to actually do a bit more than just build stuff. I wanted to actually tell people what to do. So I was quite arrogant at that stage. He's laughing, but he knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's why I'm laughing. That's exactly it.
I had zero clue. People were talking about vertical markets, positioning, brand. I had no clue. This is a whole different language and parlance and vocabulary, and I was terrible for some years. And that's why I did the MBA to sort of understand business and to equip myself with some facts. So I learned the hard way, and by making lots of mistakes. That's not the good way to do it. But the other way is the preferred way. But there are a lot of people in product leadership roles today, head of product roles, even director roles, who frankly are not that good at it. So don't be too intimidated by it, but also don't dumb it down. And it is a senior role. It's a difficult role. It's a challenging role to do well. And I think, as we sort of, the reason why I'm involved in this community, and I'm happy to sort of, share whatever I know for whatever it's worth, is I see this as sort of, helping the next generation of product managers who will take product to the next level altogether. And so we should be aspiring to be really good and really great, not a sort of normalized dysfunction and poor performance. So try to do it the right way by being excellent at your job.
Agreed.
Any more questions, Charlie? Anything else popped in?
No, but Ben's put in some good suggestions for future events, which I think would be really insightful. But yeah, just from my side of things, this is going to be available if you want to watch it again. Probably not, but there's going to be a follow-up email as well, and I'm going to cut it down into snippets. So the information is going to be readily available. Mike, I guess you kind of want to do the spiel about byproduct in the Slack channel.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on that. I mean, as you can see on the slide, everyone is like one standout point. Charlie's going to follow up with everyone, but I think as you tell more people about this initiative, and hopefully if you know people who you think would benefit from speaking to, people like the panel, and we've got, there's many more people from the community who have said they want to help. It's all down to availability. We need to, there's people who are going to join at a later date and won't necessarily have heard what you've heard today. So it'd be really good to get your feedback and what you're taking away from today. And then we can create some kind of documentation so it's available for people who maybe join in a month or 6 months or whatever it might look like. So that'd be really helpful. As I mentioned, we're all part of the Slack channel. If you've got any more questions, any more thoughts, the main channel is right in the right place. We're going to create another hashtag so it's easy to search and everything, but let's keep the conversation going, and we'll do our best to plan another event for another month's time, and we'll, hopefully this format's worked nicely, and we'll repeat it. And, any suggestions, any feedback, we'll take on board as well.
Yeah, I think I can get better at the breakout rooms. So if we can do some more events where I can improve on that aspect, that's perfect.
So thanks for everyone for coming and joining. And also thanks Parth, Scott, and Andrew for giving some time up and sharing your experiences with everyone. I'm sure everyone's appreciative as I am. So I think that's
Thanks.
Episode 1 done.
Have a good evening,
Fantastic.
everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining as well.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks everybody for the questions. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Charlie. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.